We knew he was ill when he started to get a temperature, and then he started coughing. He was coughing so much. I would be upstairs and he would be downstairs, you could hear him coughing. I'd wake up to the sound of his coughing, and it just wouldn't stop. It would just keep going and going and going. It wasn't just him who was sick, my mum was also sick as well, so we were balancing their symptoms and making sure they're both okay. But then I went to the shops to buy food for the house, and then I came back and he just wasn't breathing properly, and he was like, call the ambulance, call them. So we called them. An hour later, they still didn't come. We called them again saying, look, he's really struggling to breathe, can you please come as soon as possible? And they said, we're doing our best to come. They didn't come 2 hours later. And we called them 3-4 more times, and 5 hours later, they came and they took him away. And that was it. That was the last time I saw my dad alive. My dad, he was always smiling. That's the one thing everyone remembers him by, his smile. The way it would light people up, the way it would make people feel and make them feel better. He gave me and my brothers a sense of values, a sense of where we are in this world. One of the first things that I thought about when he passed away was he won't ever meet my kids. He won't be able to impart the same values, the same teachings that he gave to us, to my children. That loss is something that we are reminded of every single day. When I get the dinner table ready, I have to remind myself there's one less person to prepare the dinner table for. When I walk past my mum's bedroom, it reminds me that she's there by herself. When I come downstairs to have breakfast, there's one less person there eating breakfast with me. That's the hole that's been left behind, and it's one that will never ever go away. On the day he passed away, in the morning we called, they said he was fine. But then in the afternoon we got that call. And all our lives changed after that. I was upstairs sleeping, and then my brother shouting my name, saying, Areeb, Areeb, come downstairs. And my mum was crying. My brothers, one of them was crying, the other one was in shock. I snatched the phone off my mum and I just spoke to the doctor and I was like, what happened? And he said it then and there, he passed away. Not being able to be there for him in his last moments is probably the hardest thing out of everything. I'm really happy now that people are able to at least say goodbye to their loved one. But when my dad died, we weren't given that opportunity. And it's something that as a family and as a son, I will never get that moment ever again. And I don't think people realise how much that affects us to this day. If I was there, I'd have held his hand, probably put a hand over his forehead, stroked his hair for the last time, and said a prayer over him. But we weren't given that opportunity. Only 5 people were allowed to go to my dad's funeral. And it was hard because that was the first time I saw my dad in 2 weeks, in a body bag, being lowered into the ground. If my dad didn't die during a pandemic, there would be hundreds of people attending his funeral, mourning with us. People don't realise that when you grieve during COVID, you're grieving by yourself. The rituals, the customs that would have been there to comfort you during these trying times have been robbed from you. When my dad died, no one could come round to our house. We forbade it because we were scared that other people would be getting the virus from us. And it just felt lonely, you know? It felt like that we were on our own. When someone passes away from COVID, that's what families are going through. They feel isolated. They're going to feel that isolation for years to come. And it hurts. It really hurts to this day. I'm not the only person who's going through this. We're seeing thousands of families across the country. And it's so sad that nothing is changing. And it's unforgivable that people are getting away with it. And there needs to be justice for these families. The way government ministers downplayed the coronavirus just before my dad passed away is something that I can never forget. It created this idea, it's something that's in a distant land and it wouldn't affect us in any way, shape or form. But 100,000 deaths later, have we learnt from these mistakes? Have we learnt anything? I honestly think we haven't. And it's scary because that death toll is going to rise. Boris Johnson said he met grieving families, yet he's refused to meet the campaign group that's been formed with more than 2,000 families. They've asked to meet with Boris Johnson at least 6 times, and each time they've not been given the opportunity. And if Boris Johnson really cared about these families, he would have met them, but he hasn't. If Boris Johnson can continue in his role without answering the difficult questions, there's just something wrong. If I could speak to Boris Johnson right now, I'd ask a very simple question. Why didn't you impose a lockdown sooner? Why are you not learning from the mistakes that were made? Why are we seeing more and more people die? Why is it too little too late?
I am deeply sorry for every life that has been lost.
I don't accept his apology. I would have accepted his apology if less people would have died. But the fact that we're seeing the highest death rate in Europe just goes to show something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. The one thing that would given me personally some solace is that no one else would go through what we had to go through. But the sad reality is thousands of families across the UK are going through exactly what we had to go through. And that's just not fair, and it's not right at all. We should have had an inquiry into the government response months ago, because it's important that we interrogate the mistakes that were made so we don't have to keep making them again and again and again. But it seems like that's the state of play. That's where we are right now. And that's why we need an urgent inquiry into the government handling of the coronavirus. What went wrong? Why certain people were given certain contracts, for example? Why the fact that so many people had to lose loved ones? Why is it that we haven't imposed lockdowns sooner? Why is it that experts are not being taken seriously? Like, these are questions and answers that families across the UK deserve to know, because it's just not fair. We need an inquiry.